CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 0 degrees with mainly cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. Premier Wab Kinew calls the death of a man waiting for care at the Health Sciences Centre Emergency Department a wake-up call. The death of the middle-aged man Tuesday morning is now the subject of a critical incident review. Kinew says something went very wrong, and he wants the review to pinpoint what happened.
This is terrible. The person who passed away deserved better. When you go to hospital, it's to become well. We all want to see people healed when they go to an emergency room and to come out the other side of it, not only alive, but in a better condition than when they got there. So clearly this was a failure.
Kinew says he has no information about the man's background or socioeconomic situation. The Southern Chiefs organization is out with a statement this morning sending condolences on the loss of Police Chief Doug Paulson. The chief of the Manitoba First Nations Police Service died in a fire at his home in the RM of Portage-la Prairie early yesterday. The Southern Chiefs say the shock and grief at such a sudden and tragic loss is unimaginable. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass says firefighters are struggling to contain a number of deadly and devastating fires.
We continue to confront a big one-level firestorm. Historic winds and extensive drought have created a perfect storm that has driven people from their homes and have taken people's homes, and that has taken people's lives. 5
people have been killed, and officials warn the number is likely to rise. Thousands of homes and buildings have been damaged or destroyed. The weather is helping the battle somewhat. Winds have dropped enough to allow helicopters and water bombers to join the fight, but they are still strong, pushing flames and embers to new areas. Nearly 180,000 people are under evacuation orders at this point. New York's highest court has declined to block Donald Trump's sentencing in his hush money case. It's scheduled for tomorrow. The presiding judge has already indicated he will not impose jail time, fines, or probation. But Trump's lawyers argue a felony conviction would still have intolerable side effects, including distracting him as he prepares to take office. They are now appealing to the Supreme Court. Staying in the United States, President Joe Biden has just delivered a eulogy for Jimmy Carter.
Through it all, he showed us how character and faith start with ourselves and then flows to others.
Biden attended Carter's funeral at Washington's National Cathedral, along with all 4 living former U.S. presidents. One of Carter's grandchildren, Jason Carter, praised his grandfather.
He protected more land than any other president in history. And by the way, he cut the deficit, wanted to decriminalize marijuana, deregulated so many industries that he gave us cheap flights and, as you heard, craft beer. Basically, all of those years ago, he was the first millennial.
Jimmy Carter died on December 29th at the age of 100. Provincial testing is back in Manitoba for the first time since 2019. Grade 12 students are writing the multi-day provincial English exam this week, and the math exams are coming up later in January. Michael Zawagstra is a teacher in rural Manitoba. He thinks the return of standardized testing will let schools track important data.
One of the great values of standardized testing is that you're able to track growth and change over time. And so, yes, you will have some schools which have more challenging student populations where the baseline results are low. But if, let's say, over a 5-year period, if you're able to track an increase, even though it may still be on the lower side, the fact that it's increasing is positive. And then we want to encourage more of that to happen. And
according to the Program for International Student Assessment, Manitoba has ranked among the lowest in Canada for scores in math, reading, and science. You probably don't weigh the meat you buy, but you probably should. After hearing this story, a CBC News investigation has found big grocers are overcharging customers by selling meat that weighs less than the package says. Sophia Harris explains.
Okay, and weighing the meats. CBC visited 7 major grocery stores in 3 different provinces and discovered packages of underweighted meat in 4 of them. Calculated overcharges per item range from 4 to 11%. It appeared the items had been weighed with the packaging. Under federal rules, posted net weights on food labels can't include the packaging.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
Retired CFIA Inspector Terry Lee says when on the job, she often found underweighted meat in stores. She says both grocers and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency need to do more to protect shoppers.
It's a hidden cost to consumers, and they don't realize that they could be significantly overcharged by the stores.
The CFIA says it works every day to protect Canadians from mislabeled food by doing inspections, responding to complaints, and raising awareness. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Vancouver.
And for the names of the stores and their responses, you can read Sophia's article at cbc.ca. And that is your CBC News for Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app. Taking a look at the forecast for the afternoon ahead in Winnipeg, we're seeing temperatures to -4 this afternoon. It'll get a little colder. A few lingering flurries with wind expected. Brandon a high of -3 with a chance of flurries. Dauphin a high around -0 with a chance of flurries. Flin Flon, you're looking at a high of -9 this afternoon with a chance of flurries. Thompson a high around -14. You could see flurries as well. And a chance of flurries in Churchill with a high around -17 degrees.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk. Good to be with you on this finally warm afternoon. Well, coming up this hour on the show, on our call-in conversation, we want you to tell us about your experiences in Manitoba ERs and what you think needs to be done to improve care. We're opening up the phone lines after 12:30. Plus, this half hour on the show, the owners of a Winkler Cafe celebrate their 1-year anniversary. And coming up, we're going to hear how the Brazilian entrepreneurs have already expanded into other ventures. That's all coming up and much, much more here on Radio Noon. Stay tuned. But first on the show, at least 5 people have died and nearly 2,000 structures have been destroyed as wildfires tear across the Los Angeles area. A number of separate blazes are burning in the metropolitan area. It's put 130,000 people under evacuation orders. Unfortunately, Colin Friesen is not one of those people. He was born and raised in Winnipeg and now lives in central LA, and that's where we've reached him this afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Colin.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good to have you with us. I spoke with you yesterday, actually, and things were looking pretty smoky where you are. What are they looking like right now outside your apartment window?
Orange.
Orange, okay.
Orange, yeah. The sky is a lovely, well, not really a lovely shade of orange. But the thing that really struck me this morning was, you know a campfire smell, and there are good campfire smells and bad ones, and the air is just sort of horribly putrid right now. It's like it just kind of assaults you as soon as you walk out the front door.
I know when I spoke with you yesterday, you were kind of on in between whether if things could get worse, you may have to evacuate, but it didn't look totally likely. Where is that at now in terms of the likelihood that you may have to evacuate?
We are still under a red flag warning, but the nearest fire to us, which popped up last night, which was adjacent to Griffith Park, which is what we are adjacent to, that was knocked down fairly quickly. So at this point in time, it looks like we're going to be able to stay put.
And how many people do you know who've been impacted by the fire?
Oh, my God. Well, everyone's been impacted. I know 2 people personally who have lost their houses. A friend of ours is actually, we have a place that we Airbnb out in Palm Springs, and we just opened that up to a friend who was taking her elderly mother out there because the smoke was, not terrific for her health. So I'd say the entire city right now has been, everyone has been impacted by it. I was driving around trying to get on the freeway a few minutes ago, and first off, all the lights were out. Secondly, a major artery was closed, and then I got to the freeway on-ramp, and a tree had fallen across it. So major diversions are taking place all over the place.
I imagine everyone, even if they're not like yourself, like kind of immediately obviously impacted, must know someone who's lost their home or has to evacuate. Does that seem to be the case?
Yeah, last night we were just, some friends came over because they were out of power, and they had just been talking to someone who lost their home in the Pacific Palisades. And then you get to talking about insurance policies and how insurance companies have been exiting California. So you sort of get into the whole, people are already looking down the road and how bad it's going to be in terms of recovery and what they're going to be able to do. This is going to last a while. This is going to leave some lasting scars, I think, on Los Angeles.
Before I let you go here, what is the mood? Like you said, people are looking ahead, but they also kind of have to focus on the now as well. As you kind of spend time walking around Los Angeles or driving, like you probably most likely do,
there you go.
What is the mood like?
It's people are really trying to extend themselves and be helpful. I mean, there are restaurants that are saying if you're running away from the fire or have to evacuate, stop in. We'll give you free food. Everybody's sort of trying to lend a hand to make sure their neighbors are okay. That said, I would recommend people avoid social media because you will always find jackasses on there who are like, oh, it's Sodom and Gomorrah. God has cursed Los Angeles. And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's such a weird divide in this country right now. And the fire just sort of is helping to manifest that.
And from a Canadian audience perspective, what do you think Canadians should know about what's happening in Los Angeles right now from the Canadian perspective?
Climate change. This is a whole brand new thing, and the repercussions of what is happening to our climate are manifesting in new and different and strange ways, and no one saw this coming, right? And it's like it's going to happen the world over. So it's just it's happening to us now, but weirdness is coming to the rest of the planet too.
Well, Colin, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and all the best. Stay safe.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
That's Colin Friesen. He was born and raised here in Winnipeg, but he now lives in central LA.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
12:12 right now on Radio Noon. I'm Corey Funk. Good to be with you. And still to come this hour on the show, we are going to be opening up the phone lines to hear your experiences in the ER. So tune in. We are going to be doing that after 12:30. Also, just ahead, a Brazilian business success story in Winkler. Bruna and Samuel Campos say they came to Canada for a better life for their kids. And now for them, business is booming and expanding. We're going to hear their story coming up shortly. But first, let's take a look at the conditions weather-wise across the province. And it is quite a lovely day after this cold snap we've had for the past few weeks here. Brandon, right now, you're sitting at -2 and cloudy at the airport. Up in Churchill, though, it is still much cooler there. -18 with some light snow and blowing snow. Back down in Dauphin at the airport, light snow. You're sitting at -1. Flin Flon, you're -12 right now with some light snow and drifting snow as well. Gillam, light snow, -15. Hotspot right now in Manitoba is McCreary. You're sitting at 1. Portage at the airport is mostly cloudy. You are also at 1 right now. To Dooley Lake at the airport, you're at -21, making you our cold spot right now. Thompson, you are sitting at -13 with some light snow and drifting snow. And Winnipeg at the Forks, 0, mostly cloudy. Well, it goes without saying that owning and running a small business has been challenging for so many Manitobans. But Samuel and Bruna Campos are celebrating the success of their business in Winkler. They own Mina's Cafe and Eatery, and it's the business's 1-year anniversary. The couple moved to Manitoba from Brazil in 2018, and as entrepreneurs, their goal was to build a successful enterprise, and their venture has grown and expanded. Samuel and Bruna Campos join me now. Hello. Hi.
Hello.
So, Samuel, when you came to Canada, you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur. What do you love about doing business?
Yes, for me, I grew in a family that has business in Brazil. I can remember, so I love like run any kind of business and have customers and sell products. It's amazing when you tell about the product and someone will be interested to buy them.
Hmm. And Bruna, this is your 1 year anniversary of your business. So, how would you describe the past 12 months for you?
Well, it was a great month. Um, some challenges, of course, but I think we are bringing something new, so people are interested in our products, right? It's a different kind of food here for the area. So it was a curious thing and interesting, but good in the same way.
And what made you and Samuel want to move to Canada?
Almost 7 years ago.
And what made you want to move here?
Well, we were looking for. We have little kids, right? So we were looking for safe place to grow these guys.
So, Samuel, what is it like running a business in Canada compared to Brazil?
It's totally different. So the culture here in Canada to help like startups or small business, it's amazing how Canadians support small business around. In Brazil, it's tough, the competition, and you have to push the marketing and everything in the beginning. And here you just say, okay, I have an idea. I want to start something new. And a lot of people help us and buy stuff and support us of different ways.
Tell me a little bit about your business itself and everything it is, because I know it's a cafe, but there's lots of other stuff going on too, isn't there?
Yeah, we actually, when we moved to Canada, I bought a share in the company, manufacturing from farm equipment. And this idea with the food industry comes with Bruna. Bruna start make like a Brazilian snacks just for our home. So she can tell a little bit more about that. And then 2 years ago, I decided to start a podcast as well. And it's in Portuguese, so trying to help other Brazilians that have a dream to run their own business here in Canada or outside of Brazil, and we try to help them through this path from the beginning of the business.
So you kind of become a go-to person, actually, in a way, for advising other Brazilians who come to Canada, want to start a business, about how to do it. You actually go across the country speaking to other Brazilian entrepreneurs. So what are some of the common themes that you're hearing from them about the joys and challenges of starting a business, here in Canada after moving from Brazil?
The thing is, when you had a business, if you have a skills to be a business owner, you'll be always looking for an idea, run or start something new. So this is the thing that always have. But here in Canada, go out of the comfort zone. It's hard because the life here is not pushing you to have your own business. It's a great place to have a job or have a family here. You can have any kind of the job and have a good life. So this is a big challenge when you decide, okay, I want to go and start something new.
And what kind of support have you gotten from the community of Winkler?
So when we move it, Winkler, Morden, Open, Bina Valley have a few non-profit organizations that could help us, like as a business plan or how to open a business or what kind of license you need to run a business here. So they have a few organizations that help us on that as well.
And Bruna, I know Samuel was talking about him earlier, but you started making Brazilian desserts. Tell me about some of the Brazilian desserts that you've brought to Winkler into your business.
Yeah, it's actually snacks. Some of the most traditional snacks we sell in Brazil, you can find those things in any corner, basically there. So I started because I was missing them here. So I figured out how to make them here with the ingredients, different ingredients we have here, right? And I did for my family and friends around, and they gave me idea, why not you start selling them? And that's how I started. I started with only one product, the pão de queijo. It's something from Minas Gerais, our state in Brazil. It's a very traditional thing there. So that's how I started years ago. And then we moved on with the cafeteria here, selling them ready to go here at the Minas Café. Now we have them available in 8 stores, more like in the Pembina Valley area. But yeah, we have 6 of the products. We have more options here at the cafeteria, but we have 6 options in frozen packs.
It's amazing how far your business has come since you've both arrived here. If you could picture yourselves 10 years down the road, your business 10 years down the road, what's your dream for your business, for all your businesses?
Well, for my snacks specifically, I wanna reach all Canada throughout the whole Canada with my business, with my snacks.
Oh, that'd be amazing. And what about you, Samuel?
I can say that with a podcast, we pretend grow, like have other outside of Manitoba, make some podcasts with Brazilians that live outside of Manitoba. 2 years ago, we went to Vancouver and recorded there. And with the manufacturing, we are growing, we are selling overseas machines. And with the coffee, just more customers grow. And now we start serving meals at the snacks and meals as well, Brazilian meals. So we are bringing more products, Brazilian products to here.
Well, congratulations to both of you on your 1-year anniversary, and
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks so much for
Thank
taking
you
some
so
time
much.
out of your busy day, because I know you're also running your businesses right now. So thank you.
Yeah.
That's Bruna and Samuel Campos. They are the owners of Mina's Cafe in Winkler.
Manitoba's the kind of place that draws you in. Every day it's growing, it's changing. Just when you think you've got it figured out, though, there's something new to understand. I'm Marcy Marcusa, host of the CBC Daily Podcast. This is Manitoba. I've covered the news from the rail line in Churchill to the border in Emerson, and it's talking about the local stories that help us understand this place. That's what This is Manitoba is all about. Find it on CBC Listen or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
12:22 right now on Radio Noon, and stay tuned. After 12:30, we are opening up the phone lines because we want to hear about your experiences in Manitoba ERs and what you think needs to be done to improve care. So tune in after 12:30. But right now, we do want to keep the focus on healthcare and a totally different healthcare story. Norovirus causes stomach illness that leads to vomiting and diarrhea, and it's currently on the rise in Canada and the U.S. Cases are being reported at higher rates than the 5-year average. That's from 2019 to 2023. And according to the Public Health Agency of Canada, this week on CBC's The Dose podcast, infectious diseases specialist Dr. Zain Challa explains how norovirus spreads and how we can protect ourselves in different environments.
Person-to-person contact, fecal oral spread, so hand washing. It's not perfect, but it's still good. So even just good soap and water, especially as we're going into these high contact environments. So, a parent that's picking up their kid from daycare, good idea to wash their hands before they pick up their kid, just because that environment's contaminated, or when they get home after picking up that kid. If places are experiencing a norovirus outbreak, even a home, the people that are still well may want to focus on cleaning of the environment, cleaning of the toilet, just recognizing that if they can mitigate that spread in certain environments, they may not have 1 or 2 family members out, there may just be 1, which is much better than not. Certainly there are certain settings which are super high risk where you want to pay attention to environment, because there is likely someone with norovirus that's coming in that environment. I think the classic one we talk about is cruise ships. Being on a couple of cruises recently, there is a huge emphasis on hand hygiene at every point of entry. So when you're eating food, consuming beverages, coming in and out of certain environments, like high contact environments, that you wash your hands aggressively and carry that hand sanitizer around you at all times. Just recognizing that this year has actually been, from the CDC, one of the highest norovirus years on cruise ships for, the reason that there's a lot spreading in the communities. And again, it's a contact setting. There are a couple of other unique populations for norovirus in terms of food consumption. Oysters are one food that is very implicated in norovirus outbreaks. And the reason being is oysters are kind of the filter of the sea. You can imagine if there's any contamination locally with human feces in that water, that, oyster is essentially filtering it. We eat them raw, cold. Certainly has been seen in similar spot prawns, I think were implicated a few years ago. Similar type argument. Raw seafood, especially seafood that was exposed to human waste in certain settings, can be a risk factor in that context. So people who are very worried may want to avoid those foods, or at least make sure they're cooked, recognizing that sometimes changes the flavor or taste profile of all of it.
That's infectious disease specialist Dr. Zane Chagla. You can hear today's full episode on The Dose with Dr. Brian Goldman. You can catch that show on CBC Listen or your favorite podcast app. Well, time now is 12:25. We got time for a little bit of music before the news. Opaskwayak Cree Nation country artist Desiree Dorian has shared her 7th studio album, and the project was a chance to involve more Indigenous creators in the recording process. So here's Desiree Dorian with the title track. It's called Remember Your Name. You're hearing it right here on CBC Radio 1.
When the lights go out and the dark rolls in, when your body's bruised and you just can't win, when you scream out loud but you have no voice, you had a dream, now you have a choice. Remember your name, remember where you came from, touch your skin, touch your face, raise your head, take your place in the cold hard rain. Remember your name. When you're lying there on the bathroom floor, just crying to God you can't take no more, can't look yourself in the goddamn mirror, and you hope to hell you disappear. Remember your name, remember where you came from, touch your skin, touch your face, raise your head, take your place in the cold hard rain. Remember your name, remember the ones that came before you. Remember their strength will restore you. Remember when you've gone so far and forgot who you are. Remember. Remember your name, remember where you came from, touch your skin, touch your face, raise your head, take your place in the cold hard rain. Remember your name, remember your name, remember your name.
From Opaskwayak Cree Nation, that is Desiree Dorian with Remember Your Name. Well, stay tuned here on Information Radio. Lots still to come, but right now, let's take a quick look at your weather. We are sitting at 0, believe it or not, here in Winnipeg, which feels tropical compared to what we've been seeing the last couple weeks. It is going to dip down overnight, though, to minus 17 with about a 30% chance of flurries. And then tomorrow, the high is going to be minus 14. Brandon, you're right now at minus 2, and it's going to dip down to minus 19 overnight. So we'll get pretty chilly across the province once the sun goes down. And Thompson, you're at minus 13 right now, and you're going to be dipping down to minus 28 tonight. And then it's going to be cooler tomorrow with a high tomorrow of minus 22. Stay tuned. We are opening up the phone lines after your 12:30 news. We are asking, what has your experience been accessing care at Manitoba's ER, and what do you think needs to change to make access to care better? That's coming up after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 0 degrees with mainly cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. The death of a man this week waiting for care at the Health Sciences Centre Emergency Department is being called a failure by Manitoba's Premier. A critical incident review is now underway into the middle-aged man's death Tuesday morning. Critics have worried the review will not examine what role race or socioeconomic position played. Premier Wab Kinew says he doesn't have any personal information about the man who died.
But we would ask the people carrying out this review to consider whether factors like that are important, because if that's relevant to improving healthcare, then that is something that we need to look at. We only can make improvements to healthcare if we're looking at it in a straight up and truthful way.
Kinew says the man's death is a wake-up call to see what adjustments might need to be made in healthcare to prevent a similar situation. Officials across the country and the United States are scrambling to figure out the extent of a massive cybersecurity breach. It has affected school boards across North America. Jamie Strachan has the story.
Parents in at least 5 provinces received notices yesterday that their child's personal information may have been exposed as part of a security breach. Crystalline Howell is Newfoundland and Labrador's education minister.
This is a very widespread issue.
The U.S.-based company PowerSchool provides cloud software used to store troves of student and staff information.
We're working with this provider of PowerSchool to figure out what data was actually breached here.
The company says the data was accessed using a compromised credential and has since been contained. It happened between December 22nd and 28th, but school boards weren't informed until this week. Jack Amendolia has a child in the Toronto District School Board.
When it happens, just be really clear and transparent about what exactly has transpired.
PowerSchool says it's taken all appropriate steps to prevent further unauthorized access or misuse. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
And staying with school news, grade 12 students across the province have started writing the provincial English exam. It's the first time students have written the test since 2019. Phoebe Regaya, a student from St. John's High School, wrote the first part of the provincial exam earlier this week.
It was different from what I expected because last year I actually took the math provincial exam, but for English, what we had to go into is based on what we've learned for the past 12 years of our life. So we couldn't really study it, if that makes sense. We had to just go based on our literary skills.
The exam is 4 parts and happens over 4 days. 4 parts over 4 days. It involves reading, researching, and writing a rough draft and then a final paper. And that is your CBC News for Winnipeg.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Bring back flashbacks for me. The rough draft and the paper.
Yes, I know. I know. I'm really glad I never have to write an exam ever again.
We do it every day.
I guess that's kind of true if you think about it.
We write papers, basically.
I guess, yeah. Maybe when you put it that way. Thank you very much
Back
there,
soon.
Matt. That is Matt Humphrey at our CBC News Desk. And if you were listening to that PowerSchool story that Matt just played for you on air, I would want you to know that CBC actually, we looked into the schools across the province who have posted about it on their website, the divisions that have. So here's a list of, it's not the full comprehensive list, but this is the list of schools that we could find with posts on the website about being impacted. So here's the list here that we have so far. Seine River, Louis Riel, Beautiful Plains, Division Scolaire Franco-Manitobain, Mountain View, Swan Valley, Borderland, Brandon, Rolling River, Portage-la-Prairie, Hanover, Southwest Horizon, Sunrise, and Red River Valley School Division. And we are in the newsroom working to understand the further impacts of that PowerSchool breach on our province. So stay tuned throughout the day for more coverage of that. It is 12:34 right now here on Radio Noom. I'm Corey Funk, and Riley Lachuk is here with me for a closer look at the fairly warm forecast, at least down south here in the province.
Some very warm temperatures, +1 right now in Morden. Winnipeg, we're actually at 0 downtown at the moment. Portage is at 0, -2 in Brandon. On the flip side, -12 in Thompson, -18 at the moment in Churchill. That little dusting of snow that moved through, the main bulk of it is off into northwestern Ontario and Minnesota right now, moving through Fort Frances and Dryden. Still, though, a few lingering flurries into Manitoba. And actually here in Winnipeg, we're under a bit of a hole in that cloud right now. So that's what's allowed us to jump above the freezing mark, at least for the time being. Don't expect this warm temperature to stay around for any length of time. Once we get into the afternoon hours here, we'll start to see our temperature dropping back down again toward, well, still above seasonal, but not the zero that we're at right now. So again, some holes in that cloud through the afternoon. So some sunny breaks with a few lingering flurries even into the late afternoon across southern Manitoba. Still a chance of a few more snowflakes. We'll clear as we get into the day on Friday. And we get a mix of sun and clouds as we get into Friday. Cloud starts to build in late in the day once again. This is ahead of our next area of low pressure. This is a system out of Alberta that is poised to bring snow to the western side of the province as we get Friday into Saturday. For Winnipeg, for the Red River Valley, for much of the Interlake, this is, we'll get grazed by it here. So no real accumulation, but certainly, a dusting to maybe a couple of centimeters through the morning hours into the afternoon on Saturday, not out of the question. We'll keep a close watch on that as we get later into the week here. Temperature, by the time we get to late afternoon, I think we're probably at about -4 by the time we reach sunset in Winnipeg at about 4:45 or so this afternoon. Otherwise, high temperatures, which we've already kind of reached at the freezing mark or just above, really, for southern Manitoba. A few flurries in the north, -11 for Thompson, -17 in Churchill. Tomorrow in Winnipeg, back toward more seasonal conditions, -14, a mix of sun and clouds. Flurries, -9 for Saturday, -16s to -18s through Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Riley.
You're welcome.
That is Riley Lachuk, our CBC weather specialist and climate change reporter. I'm Corey Funk. Welcome to Radio Noon. I also just thought it's also worth adding, I know I just mentioned that list of schools that do say on their website that they have been impacted by the Power School data breach. Also worth mentioning that Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson told CBC it does not use Power School and it was not impacted. So if you're a parent in WSD, that is what we heard from Matt Henderson today, that there is no impact. Right now, though, at 12:36, let's move on to another story that's been on the minds of many Manitobans throughout the week. The death of a man waiting for care at the Health Sciences Centre Emergency Department is now the subject of a critical incident review. Premier Wabkanu calls it a wake-up call and says something went very wrong. This morning on Information Radio, CBC's Marcy Marcusa told Premier Canoe that some Manitobans don't go to ERs because they don't feel they'll get the care they need. She then asked the Premier why Manitobans should trust the system, and here was his response.
Because we have excellent people working on the front lines. And the role of our provincial government is to ensure that those on the front lines who keep showing up have the resources that they need to do this great calling that they've stood up to answer. I think there's a lot of issues in the healthcare system that we need to look at, particularly at the upper echelons of the bureaucracy, but I have full confidence in the people on the front lines. And when I hear stories from people who show up as patients and are feeling discouraged and are feeling stressed out or feeling frustrated, my heart really goes out to them. But then when we get to the question of solutions, how do we fix these things? The answer is the people on the front lines. It's investing in more healthcare workers to be able to serve you, the patient. But we can't train a nurse overnight. We can't recruit a nurse overnight. What we can do is marshal a significant amount of public resources year after year to hire more nurses, to train more physicians, to recruit more support workers into the healthcare system. But when you have a situation like the one that we're talking about
on
here
Tuesday,
this morning, if that's a wake-up call, calling resources to a specific area of the healthcare system, then I'm telling you that we're going to be flexible and responsive, and we will course correct to ensure that we're addressing the needs that are highlighted there.
That's Premier Wabkanu speaking on Information Radio this morning. And today on our call-in conversation, we want you to weigh in. What has your experience been in Manitoba ERs? What do you think needs to change to improve care? You can call us. Our lines are open now. Our director, Wendy, is standing by. 204-780-0893 is the number to call. That's 204-780-0893. You can also text us, 204-588-7355. That's 204-588-7355 if you prefer to text. Joining us now to navigate this very complex conversation is patient advocate and CEO of CanAge, Laura Tamblin-Watts, and she joins us now. Hello there.
Good to be here.
So what was your reaction to the news of the death of a man waiting in the HSC ER Tuesday morning?
Horrible. news, of course, but in some cases, really not surprising. We know that the concerns around triage in ERs remain despite lessons that have been learned and promises made. And we know that for people who do go to an ER, that the wait times are very long indeed, and that staff don't always get to attend to folks. And of course, one of my first questions is, I hope this isn't another question of concerns around racialization or Indigenous patients seeking help, because of course in Manitoba we have a history of some really significant tragedies around that.
Mm-hmm. And that's it's worth noting that we don't have any details on who of about the man who died, so that is still to come. You just also heard Premier Canute's response and proposed solution. So what are your thoughts on his comments?
I think he is committed to making changes, but we've had a lot of reports in Winnipeg, and we've had a lot of reports in Manitoba broadly in the last 5 years. We can think back to the Maples report in long-term care and the promises to make significant change. The former Minister of Health became the last premier, and again with promises of change. What we don't see is a significant shift in resources. Yes, it's true we can't make a nurse overnight, but there are a lot of things that can be done, and Manitoba is, I'd say, somewhere in the middle of implementing them. There's a lot of quick changes around, for instance, better use of technology that have not been implemented.
So do you think it's on the right track then? It's just a matter of time before it's fixed, or what do you think?
Sadly, no. I actually think that the Winnipeg system as a microcosm of the entire province is something that we need to take very seriously. More and more people are ending up in the ER, and part of that reason is because we have fewer resources in the community, not enough home care, so people end up in the ER, not enough care on addictions and mental health services, so people end up in the ER. Layer that onto an aging population where there's not enough spaces in personal care homes or other types of services. And again, you get this upward pressure in the ER. I don't think that we've seen a significant change either in the hospital system or, much more importantly, in the whole healthcare system to really turn the ship yet.
Feel free to weigh in. Tell us about your experiences in Manitoba ERs, and what do you think needs to change to improve care? Let us know. Give us a call. Our phone lines are open, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. You can also text us, 204-588-7355. That's 204-588-7355. Now, I know when people heard the news of a man who died in the ER, I think a name probably popped into a lot of Manitobans' mind, and that name is Brian Sinclair. He died in HSC ER in 2008 after waiting 34 hours, and his death led to changes in intake and the monitoring of patients. And those changes were supposed to prevent similar incidents. So, what do you know about what's changed for ER patients since 2008 when Brian Sinclair died?
So there were 63 recommendations that came out of that investigation. And if I'm current, I believe 55 of them have been implemented. One of the ones that hasn't remained implemented is connecting this around a really fulsome change around Indigenous health, and also making sure that people who are vulnerable because they may have drug or alcohol addictions issues or may be experiencing poverty or homelessness is really integrated in both the ER and the broader discharge policy. That's very much a work in progress. But there have been some changes. So, for instance, in that terrible case, he had thrown up many times. So, one of the changes is if somebody throws up in the ER, you have to go and actually check in on that. He hadn't been checked in on in 34 hours. In fact, had rigor mortis set in. Can you believe that? And had been dead between 2 and 7 hours. Now there is a process where people do have to be checked in on. And he was identified as a very vulnerable person due to a number of issues, including racialization and poverty and disability. They are supposed to make specific flagging for a very vulnerable person and treat them with a greater degree of attention. Whether that's actually happened, I think, is very much up for debate.
And Laura, you said that Winnipeg is in the middle of the country in terms of making change to the ER. So, do you have an example of ERs that are very effective and those on the other end of the spectrum as well?
It's important to remember that there is an urban-rural divide. So if you're going to be in a rural community, you're going to have a very different experience than in downtown Winnipeg, in the same way that if you're in the far north in Ontario, it's going to be a very different experience than in downtown Toronto. So I think that urban-rural split's got to be something that we keep in our mind. But if we're talking about big ER rooms like the one here, We have seen some really interesting and innovative things done. Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal have all instituted a greater use of monitoring and technologies. So just think about all those Apple Watches that we have, or smartphones, and so on. We can actually use that information about your blood pressure, about your heart rate. Those basic monitoring things can be actually done by a lot of um, really ordinary commercial devices that not everyone has, but a lot of people have. So integrating some of those in pilot studies to make sure that we're using everyday technology. Now, what you need on the other end is a place to receive it. So someone's got to have a pilot project or somewhere that we can hook up those devices, and obviously privacy concerns are real, but we've seen some good versions of that. Another one I would flag is the ER room without borders. So a lot of times people actually don't need to come to the ER, which can be very difficult for many folks with transportation as an issue, or time, or maybe they have to be in their own house for other reasons. So we actually have ER staff coming to them as an outreach. So not paramedics, but an actual set of ER services coming to them. And I think that that is a really innovative way of thinking about how to use technology and people more effectively.
And where are they doing that, these borderless ERs?
We've got some in New Brunswick. There's some in Nova Scotia that are happening right now. We've got some in Toronto, and a few other parts in Ontario have been working them, and they've been great. Sometimes they're called hospitals without borders or ERs without borders. So they're often kind of rapid response teams, sometimes partnering with the paramedic-based services to provide not just a paramedic, but which is of course a wonderful resource to have, but actually having more on-hand treatment as well.
Colin, what has your experience been in Manitoba ERs? What do you think needs to change to improve care? You can call us. Our phone lines are open, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. So Laura, yourself, what do you hear from people you speak to regularly about their efforts to access ER treatment?
It's very difficult. And I think it's important that we, if you will, parse out why people go to an ER. So sometimes people go to an ER because they've fallen and they can't get up, and they've had to get a paramedic come, and while they're there, they put them on a gurney and then take them to the ER. Do they really need to go to the ER? Probably not. They probably just need to be checked out and helped and to stay at home. So we have people who go for reasons that are feeding from a paramedic system. I think we could do better with some of those resources and some screening. We have people go because they can't get a family doctor or a nurse practitioner or a walk-in clinic. And so the ER is, if you will, their primary source of healthcare. And some of the changes for that, we could do a better job with expanding the scope of practice that community health clinics can do. We can give pharmacists a greater purview so that they can treat some sort of everyday ailments. We don't go there. Another reason some people go to the ER that we don't really need them to is because they need what we call labs done, right? They need blood work or urinalysis or x-rays and so on. And again, we can use those in the community and get those people out. So let's think about that in a different way. Because what happens is when you actually are coming in with a heart attack or a car accident or something that's really urgent, the whole place is clogged with this mishmash of people. One of the things we have seen that can be done is where you have like bone setting screening rooms or infection screening rooms, where you come in and you're triaged into a quick bone set, or you think that you've broken your arm. Okay, you're not going to go through this. You're going to go straight to where they do the casts, and they will transmit you in that direction. Or same, we think that you've got an infection or something in your lungs. We're going to screen you straight into things that will take care of that. And again, leaving that bigger flow through for the folks who need it most.
We've got Ruth on the line. Hi there, Ruth.
Hi.
What's your story?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I won't mention which hospital it was. I accompanied a friend who doesn't speak very good English, so I was serving as an interpreter. And what I saw was a packed waiting room, so packed that at one point somebody came in and said, thank you very much for your patience, for waiting. We're sorry, a lot of you're going to have to wait the whole night, etc. And I'm very upset at all the insinuations so far about this has been an issue about race. This has come up again and again, because if you go to any emergency room, there's every color of people, there's every language being spoken. It's not an issue about race. It's an issue of not enough staff, not enough services being provided. And to right away insinuate that it's about race, it's making me very angry because that's not what's happening out there. And I would encourage the Premier to visit a few waiting rooms in emergencies and go and see how many races are out there. It's just not enough staff, and the staff that took care of my friend were amazing. They were absolutely amazing. They were just overworked.
Thank you for your story, Ruth. Really appreciate your perspective. That is Ruth. And we've also got, we're just going to move on because we've actually got a few callers here. Diane. Hi there, Diane.
Hello.
Hi. Tell us your story.
So I live in the Pembina Valley, and I had a post-op infection following a knee surgery and went to the ER, and the nurses were prompt. I was triaged promptly. The diagnostics were prompt, had needed blood work. The delay was with physicians, and they had one physician instead of three on all of my 10 visits there.
Wow. And so every time in 10 visits, there was always just...
And every physician I saw apologized for the wait. Like it's their fault. It's not their fault. They're going as hard as they can. So excellent care, excellent. And the nights when I didn't need to see a doctor, the nurse just gave me my antibiotic, and I was in and out inside of 3/4 of an hour. But that was half the time. The other half the time I needed to see a doctor, and that was... Yeah, it was anywhere from 4 to 9 hours wait.
Wow, that's long.
And the waiting rooms were full. And I saw nurses circulate and repeat vital signs on several patients through that process and reassuring them.
And I guess for you, the answer in terms of how to make it better, I guess, would just be more doctors, I guess, right? If there was 2 more, could it move faster?
What I have seen, it's a physician shortage. That's just in my personal experience.
Thank you for sharing that experience, Diana. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for this opportunity.
Laura, I mean, the kind of overarching theme, and I know I was in the emergency room recently with my 2-year-old, and it was a similar kind of thing where you notice all the staff are working hard. It wasn't the problem of quality of care. It was quantity. Is that what you're noticing as well?
Yeah, I mean, our Canadian healthcare system is fabulous, and anyone who says it isn't should look again. We have superbly qualified healthcare providers. What we don't do as well as we need to do is engage in a team-based approach. Yes, we do need more healthcare workers. There's no question about that. And we need to make sure that we move more quickly to ensure that we get, as the caller said, more doctors, but also expand nurse practitioners and physicians' assistants. Make sure that the healthcare providers like pharmacists have the full scope of practice, because a team base can be very helpful. We heard from her that, when there was a doctor there, that the nurse or nurse practitioner was very well able to figure out what was wrong with her, and she was able to get the medications quickly. That's the kind of thing that we need to do. And noting that we have a physician shortage, let's get people out of the ERs when they need those ordinary things and into community-based clinics so they actually don't have to go to the hospital.
We got a text from someone as well. So they texted saying, with most people having a mobile pocket, this is their idea. With most people having a mobile pocket phone instead of sitting in an emergency room, why can't emerge staff say, we'll phone you 2 hours before the doctor can examine you, so go home and wait for us to call you? What do you make of an idea like that listener texted in with?
Well, there's something about having better waiting services at a restaurant where you might get one of those little discs that notifies you or a text message saying come to your table, then you get it in the ER. I think what's important here is to remember that there are many different kinds of things that show up in an ER. And there is something to be said with, hey, we can reach to you, and that's important. As a lawyer, I can tell you that there are responsibilities. If a person is in the ER, then they're in the Hospital Act legislation, which means that there's liabilities that assigned to that. If a person leaves, then they're leaving kind of their own free will. What I think is really important is this idea of technology, though, because there are a lot of things that we can do with our own personal devices or devices that are now quite easy to do that will help people monitor. So you just have to make sure that the law and liability catches up with some of the modern technologies. But I do think some streaming can help.
And before we let you go here, Laura, I mean, just to sum things up, what do you think needs to change to ensure better care for patients? Just on if you're to give us just a short laundry list.
Three things. One is a health and human resources, like really effective strategy. Caller's right. We need more people to work in the system and to not burn out. So we actually do need recruitment and retention, no question. Number two, expand scope of practices. Don't leave everything to doctors. Get everyone to do all the things they can and more community clinics.
Laura, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and all the best.
Thank you.
That is Laura Tamblin-Watts. She is a patient advocate and CEO of CanAge, a national seniors advocacy organization, and as patient advocate as well, as I said. It is 12:55 now, and thanks once again to everyone who called in as well with their stories. Very much appreciated. We are nearing the end of this edition of Radio Noon, but of course, Up to Speed is on today from 3 to 6, and Chloe Friesen is sitting in the host chair today. Hello.
Hello.
What are you working on?
Corey, do you have a to be read list, a TBR list as they call it?
I actually do. Usually in January is when I start. It's like kind of my New Year's resolutions where I'm like, I'm going to read these books this year.
Okay, so this is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like Corey and you like to put together this list, Canada Reads is back.
Okay.
And this is kind of just like a list already curated for you.
That's nice.
So the annual Battle of the Books, it determines the one book that all of Canada should read. So coming up on Up to Speed, we're going to speak with Catherine Leroux about the Canada Reads long list.
Okay.
So your list of books awaits you.
Okay, I haven't written down my list. It's usually just like a mental list, so this will be handy.
We'll give it right to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chloe. That is Chloe Friesen. She is hosting Up to Speed this afternoon from 3 to 6. And yes, thank you once again to everyone who helped put together today's show as well. Marshall Hodgins is our technician. Wendy Parker is our director and our producer. Our YouTube live stream is Kevin Nipatebo as well. L'Oreal School Division intern Chin Kai Cheng. Thank you as well for helping out with that as well. Good to have you behind the glass, all of you. It is right now in Winnipeg. We are sitting at 0. It is going to dip down to -17 tonight. In Brandon, we are at -2 right now. But tonight it's going to dip down to -19. So enjoy the warm weather while it lasts, because it's not going to last for too long. It is a January in Manitoba, of course. I'm Corey Funk, and whatever you find yourself up to today, hope you find yourself doing something you love with the people you love. Coming up on CBC Radio 1, Quirks in Quarks. Have a good one.